Well, here we all are at a webinar called Searching for Peace that has been planned by Mennonite Church, British Columbia. My name is Jerry Bueller, and I'm part of the Service, Peace and Justice Committee of MCBC. I acknowledge that I am on land that we stole from the Silix First Nation. I'm pretty sure that this evening we are going to learn some history, some geography, some theology, and we're going to hear some observations and reflections on current developments and realities in Palestine. I'm honored this evening to introduce Alex Awad. Alex has been long a voice for peace in Palestine and a diligent advocate for those impacted by the Israeli occupation. Alex is practiced and skilled at the delicate task of engaging evangelical Christians in conversations about Zionism. Alex will present for about 30 minutes and then break for some questions. And then 30 minutes later, we'll have another break. So out of the 90 minutes, we'll break every 30 minutes to respond to some questions. And Gary Jansen, our Executive Minister of MCBC, will moderate that part of our time together. So please remember to write your questions into the Q&A feature it's accessible at the bottom of your screen. So Alex, a warm welcome to you.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me all right? Is my voice heard? I believe so. Yeah, I am very glad to be with you. I want to thank the Mennonite Church in British Columbia for inviting me and giving me this opportunity to share with you. Also, I want to thank Jerry Bueller, Gary Jansen, and also Byron Ramble, Bergholder. These Mennonite names are, to me, are tongue twisters, just like Arabic names will be for you. But I'm glad, you know, to be able to be with you and to share with you at this time. I will stop halfway through the sharing in order for any of you that have a question may ask his or her question. I want to say at the outset something very important, because quite often after I give a lecture, somebody would accuse me of being what I am not. And so I want to say ahead of time that I am not anti-Semitic. I don't hate the Jewish people. I am not anti-Jewish. I do not call for an end of Israel's state in the Holy Land. I do not call for return of the Jewish people to Europe or anywhere else that they may have come from. My theology is not and will not be classified as what you would call supersessionist theology or replacement theology, that God is done with the Jewish people and they are hopeless forever and ever. I don't believe in that. All right, so it's important for everyone to know this about me. What am I? I am actually an eyewitness of injustices that happened to me, to my family, and to my people in the last 70 years or 70 some years. When I was 2 years old, we had a war in the Middle East, the first Arab-Israeli war. I was 2 years old. My father was shot and killed in this war, leaving my mother with 7 children. We all have to go to boarding schools and orphanages. And it was very hard for my mother to take care of 7 children. But she worked very, very hard. She was a committed Christian. Her motto was, never look back, always look forward. Never ask why God, always ask how God. And never harbor any hatred in your heart, always forgive. This is what we learned from my mother, and this is what we are teaching my siblings and myself. We are not anti-Jewish, but we have suffered much, not only us as a family, the Awad family, but the Palestinian people. We suffered so much in the last 70 some years. And what I am trying to say, look at my suffering. I do not want pity. I don't want sympathy, but I want action. Action to stop suffering for the future generations of Palestinians and Israelis. And this is the purpose of my lecture today. I am urging you to stand with me and all other Israelis and Palestinians who are struggling for justice, justice and only justice for all the people who live in the Holy Land. In order to do that, I'm going to share with you a PowerPoint. So if you wait a second, let me get my PowerPoint ready and going. Okay, that's not it. Let me go back. Okay, and I'll do it again. Sharing, and here it is. All right, and I'll start from the top. And this is the first one. And it is okay. Oh, no, that's not what I wanted. Okay, what happened? Okay, stop sharing again. Go back to sharing. And this is it. And this is it.
You have to click on the first slide.
Okay, bending the arc of covenant. Okay, let me see now. Or no, why does it go back to this one? Why does it go back to this one? Again, one more time. Okay. Okay, maybe I'll do it in a different way. In a different way. Okay, slideshow. Slideshow, here we go. No, every time I try to enlarge it, I get this block, which I don't need.
Alex,
can anyone help? Yes.
Alex, I think you have to go on when the slides are on the left column, click on the first one so that it goes to the first one.
Okay, all right.
So
then I'll
share it
do
again and then click on the top one of the left column there, and then it'll go to the first one.
Okay, okay. All right, I will go here and I will go here and I will go here. Okay, let me see. All right. Okay, let me see now if I can get it going. No, I go back every time I try to enlarge it. Am I doing something wrong? Okay, would somebody manipulate it instead of me? Okay. Or can you see it now? Is it visible now?
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay, it's not filling the screen, but because when I try to focus on it, then it changes. I don't know why. Okay, then let me go back to the first one. Okay, here is my theme, bending the moral arc. And you can see where I get that theme from. Martin Luther King said the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice. Of course, other people have said it. in different ways. And my question for us today, how we can help bend the arc towards justice. Obama put it in a different way, which is also good for us. He said the arc of the moral universe may bend towards justice, but it does not bend on its own. What Obama is trying to say is that the arc of the moral universe needs a little bit of our help. It needs your help, and it also needs my help. Now, the question is, why Palestine? I am focusing, of course, on justice for Palestine, justice for the Palestinian people. And why do I focus on the Palestinian cause and the Palestinian situation? So I'm going to show you now some slides that will tell you why, I am focusing on the Palestinian issue. Here you see a picture of relatives mourned near the body of Palestinian woman Dalia Shamhoudi, 23 years old, during her funeral in Jenin in the Israeli-occupied West Bank. Reuters brought the story. This is July or August 7, 2020. Now, what do we know about this Dalia? Dalia was not a fighter. She was not carrying a weapon. She was not even in a demonstration. Dalia was at home. She was watching from her home window, watching a demonstration where Palestinians were throwing stones at Israeli soldiers, and the soldiers were shooting live ammunition, and she got shot and she got killed. Now, the sad thing about it, this is happening frequently in the West Bank, in the Gaza Strip, in East Jerusalem. So this is the situation that Palestinians are facing. And that's one of the reasons why, we need to do something about it. We need to bend the arc, the moral arc of justice toward Palestine and the Palestinian people. Here is another reason. And these are not Christmas lights, but rather these are Israeli missiles striking Gaza. Palestinian resistant factions also fire back. But for the last 13 years, Gaza have been experiencing something like this, almost daily, almost weekly, Israeli strikes against the Gaza. And it is one of the poorest places on earth. And yet the Israelis continue to strike Gaza again and again and again. So for the sake of Gaza and the people of Gaza, we want to see how we can bend the moral arc towards justice. And also we want justice for Israelis. Palestinian resistance fires 2 rockets into Israel, 5 Israelis injured. That's September 16, 2020. So these are recent pictures. It shows you that the conflict continues. The conflict is not stopping. And we need to understand that in one way, we are all responsible, whether we are Palestinians, Israelis, Canadians, US citizens, North Americans, we are all responsible about what is happening in the West Bank and the Gaza Strip, because we are allowing these things to go on and on year after year, and we are not stopping it. Let me talk a little bit more about Gaza. 13 years under siege, 13 years under a very, very cruel blockade. I mean, can you imagine if some people put Jewish people in what we call Gaza today and blockade them for 13 years. The world will be crying out foul. The world will be crying out injustice. The world will do anything to stop cruelty against Jewish people. Why can't we also cry injustice and cry this is cruel and try to stop the injustice that is happening to about 2 million people that live in the Gaza Strip? Most of them are under the age of 17 years old. But if you look at the north, Gaza is surrounded by Eretz in the north. There is a big wall, and all the way to the east here, there is the Israeli wall surrounding Gaza. From down south, the Egyptians are having their wall surrounding Gaza with a little passage opening called Rafah, where sometimes it trickles, few Gazan people can get out from Gaza from Rafah. And you have the Mediterranean Sea. Israeli gunboats are way all over here. If the Gazans trying to go a few kilometers more than the areas designated to them at the sea, they get shot at and killed. And many Palestinian sailors have been killed. So Gaza is at the verge of starvation. The situation in Gaza is terrible. And yet the world is silent about what's happening in Gaza. I visited Gaza many times. I used to be the director of the Shepherd Society, a humanitarian society in Gaza. And this is a picture that I took on one of my visits to Gaza after the 2014 bombing of Gaza. The situation was terrible, and many homes, many buildings, many structures fell with people inside them, and thousands of men, women, and children were killed. Most of them were not Hamas fighters. Most of them were not involved in fighting the state of Israel, civilians, what the Israelis would call collateral damage. But a lot of people died in Gaza. But Gaza have not yet recovered from the 2010, 2012, 2014, and the ongoing situation in Gaza that is really not helping the people of the Gaza at all. So we need to pray for Gaza, but especially for the children, the young people in Gaza. This is also aftermath of the 2014 bombing of Gaza. Imagine young people having to go to school, and every day they have to pass through destroyed homes, destroyed buildings, and the memory of destroyed mothers and fathers and brothers and sisters and grandparents and so on. Gaza is really a place in trauma, and I would say we are all responsible for the situation in Gaza because of our silence, because we are not shouting loud enough, because we are not saying to the world that this insanity needs to stop. And the people in Gaza, of course, the 2 million people in Gaza, sometimes they go to the border, the Eretz border near Israel, or to the wall, and they try to protest the terrible situation that they are in. Notice in this picture, you don't see a gun on any of them. You don't see any weapons. People just go out to tell the Israelis they are not happy with the situation. They are not happy with this big prison that they are in. And what's the Israeli response? You can see it from the sky. It rains on them with a lot of fire and with a lot of brimstone and with deadly forces and gases that kill many in Gaza. Another reason we need to talk about this is what I would say the home demolitions. Israel's home demolitions in West Bank spiked during pandemic, UN reports. From March to August, 389 Palestinian-owned structures were razed in the West Bank, the United Nations said. So this is continuing. I mean, we are talking about from March to August in the West Bank, the Israelis are destroying homes. This is also happening in East Jerusalem. This is Haaretz. It's an Israeli newspaper. It says, Israel on track for record number of East Jerusalem home demolitions. The government has significantly stepped up the demolition of homes in East Jerusalem this year, despite the coronavirus pandemic and the accompanying economic crisis. Can you imagine the people in Gaza, in the West Bank, in East Jerusalem? They have coronavirus, they have the occupation. In Gaza, they have the siege, and they have home demolitions. And this is as recent as, the times that we are living in today. I'm not talking about ancient history. This is really modern history. So we are talking about home demolition. And this map shows you the extent of the land that Palestinians have lost since 1946. This is 1946, this is how it became 1947. Here is 1949 to 1967. And here is 2008. And we wished that the Israelis would have stopped here, but we know that they have not stopped confiscating land from Palestinians. Now, why is this happening, this confiscation of land? It's because the Israelis are hungry for Palestinian lands. And Israeli politicians and the Israeli right-wing religious movement, they believe that all of Palestine, from the Mediterranean Sea to the River Jordan, all of it belongs to the Jewish people. And it's a mistake for the Palestinians to be living there, and they are doing everything they can to get the Palestinians out. And part of that, excuse me, is trying to convince their own people that the Palestinians are less than human and they don't deserve to live in this land. Look at this important Jewish rabbi and what he is saying to his people. All right, kill Palestinians to get closer to God, the rabbi is saying. And his name is Shamuel Eliyahu, chief rabbi of Safad and member of Israeli Chief Rabbinate Council. You think he was stopped? You think he went to jail for this propagation? Absolutely not. He's as popular as ever among Israelis. He also said the Palestinians are monsters and killing them is a religious duty. Well, if you want to take the land and there are Palestinians on the land, you have to imagine that those people who are not Jewish, who are on the land, they are monsters, they are beasts, and then we need to get rid of them. If you dehumanize them, then yes, you can ask God to get rid of them. Kill Palestinians to get closer to God, he said. Not only religious figures, but also political figures like this beautiful lady, Israeli lawmaker, Ayelet Sheked, calls for genocide of Palestinians and gets thousands of Facebook likes. Call for the slaughter of Palestinian mothers. She calls for the slaughter of Palestinian mothers who give birth to little snake. So the rabbi called us monsters, and she calls us little snakes. So if we are monsters, if we are snakes, if we are animals, if we are beasts, then it is legitimate for Israeli soldiers and Israeli settlers to shoot and kill us without mercy. And once they shoot and kill us, and once we are scared of them and we run away from the country, our homeland, then they can take it and it is theirs. Well, here we have the Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu. He is showing his people, this is all in Hebrew, but he is showing them what land in the West Bank that he is going to annex to the state of Israel, as if they have not annexed enough Palestinian lands since 1948 until today. So I call it bending the arc towards injustice. And Netanyahu is good at that. Israeli Prime Minister threatens to annex a third of the West Bank. And this, excuse me, this threat is still going on in spite of normalization with some Arab states. It is still going on, but on the land, it's not a threat. On the land, it's a reality. Israelis are all the time confiscating Palestinian lands in the Gaza Strip and making it part of Greater Israel. This is something started in 1948, and it did not stop even not one day. It's going on today. And this is also goes along with what the Trump administration would like to call the deal of the century. Amid Netanyahu's threat of annexing a third of the West Bank, Trump continues to work behind closed doors to pressure Palestinians to accept his deal of the century. And this is here, the map of the deal of the century. So you notice Israel will take whatever, all the existing settlements in the West Bank will be part of Greater Israel. 1/3, which is the Jordan River Valley, right, this area, that will be also part of Greater Israel. And they'll give the Palestinians some areas right here, south of the Gaza Strip in the Negev desert, and tell them this is your compensation for the land that we have stolen for you. And of course, you know that the Palestinians have not been consulted on these terrible, terrible schemes of Israel and the American president at this time. All right, so another blow, because, you know, let me go back to this. Okay, Donald Trump was hoping that this will be his peace deal of the century. Well, it's not working. It's not making peace. It's not going to give him a crown on his head, the crown of the emperor who made peace between the Israelis and Palestinians. But he is desperate to have a victory in the Middle East. So what he did, he went to some Arab states and he called on them to normalize with Israel. And he was able to get 2 Arab states willing to normalize with Israel. Here it says Israel, UAE, United Arab Emirates, and Bahrain sign historic peace accord at the White House. And of course, Palestinians, you can imagine, they are not happy with this. Palestinians are against normalization with, the Arab countries normalizing with Israel. I have written a whole article about this, and if you like to read the article about normalization and why Palestinians are against normalization, go to this. It's good. It's called Good Faith Media. And the name of my article is Sidestepping Palestine Won't Foster Real Peace. It is September 23rd, 2020. So the whole article, it tells why Palestinians are against Arab countries normalizing with the state of Israel. But in summary, I will tell you why the Palestinian people are against normalization. And I'll read to you what I wrote. Number 1, the part of normalization that had to do with Palestine violates UN resolutions and international legitimacy. These people are not going to the United Nations. There is no peace process. There is no sitting down with world leaders to try to consult with them. These people are doing their own dirty work, step-siding the United Nations. Number two, Palestinians do not trust the architects of normalization. Actually, these are Zionists, whether it is Netanyahu or Jared Kushner or David Lieberman or Jason Greenwald. All of these people who worked this out to try to sell it first to the American people are Israelis who are in support of right-wing Israeli positions. They support the settlements in the West Bank. They contribute to the settlements in the West Bank. And now they created a deal, and they are surprised that the Palestinians are not happy with their deal. Number three, Palestinians understand that leaders that are normalizing with Israel have their own agendas and interests at heart and little genuine concern for the Palestinian people. So, United Arab Emirates and Bahrain and some Gulf countries, they are scared of Iran, whether right or wrong, but they are scared of Iran. They want Israel and the United States to protect them from Iran. So they are willing to sell the Palestinians in order to protect themselves from what they think of as Iranian aggression. Number four, normalization would postpone the annexation of land in the West Bank, but would not stop it. The Israelis threatened to annex the Jordan River Valley, and then the whole world went against it. Europe went against it, the United Nations went against it, the international community went against it, and the Israelis decided, okay, to back off. That's when these two Arab states, they said, okay, we'll normalize if the Israelis will not annex the Jordan River Valley. It's just a ploy. It's a deception from beginning to end. Number five, normalization will put an end to the BDS movement. In case you don't know what's the BDS movement, is the boycott, divestment, and sanctions that it's a non-violent movement to try to pressure Israel to stop its oppression of the Palestinian people. Number six, normalization legitimizes the Israeli occupation of Palestine. As Arab countries normalize with Israel, I mean, European countries and other countries are going to say, why should we boycott Israel if Arab countries are normalizing the relationship with Israel, are having, trade with Israel, and everything is fine and dandy between them and Israel. So why would the rest of the world stop normalizing with Israel if Arab countries do that? And this is why Palestinians are so upset, because these countries are opening the door for the rest of the world to say, there is no such thing as occupation. The Palestinian people are not suffering. People in Gaza are not suffering. Let's hug the Israelis and make peace with the Israelis. It's very cynical, very ugly. Number seven, for some poor Arab countries, such as Sudan, the US message, normalize with Israel or face consequences. These consequences are like sanctions. These consequences are like, we keep your name on the nations that are supporting terrorism. And once your name, since your name is on those lists, nobody wants to have trade with you, and your economy suffers a lot. So the Americans are saying to some of these poor Arab countries, why don't you hurry, normalize with Israel, and we will help your economy. So these are some of the reasons why Palestinians are against normalization. Not only Palestinians, but actually most Arabs are against normalization. Here I was searching in Google and I found this, 2019-2020 Arab Opinion Index. The question was, would you support or oppose diplomatic recognition of Israel by your country? It is given to all these Arab countries that are listed here, from Algeria all the way down to Saudi Arabia. And here is the response for all countries. 88% oppose diplomatic recognition of Israel, and only 6% of the Arab people, these are the people on the street. I'm not talking about the kings, the sheikhs, the emirs. I'm talking only about the average person on the street. Only 6% of them would normalize with Israel, and of course 6% of them have no opinion. So anybody tells you that the Arab world is ready to recognize Israel, this is absolutely not true. All right, we'll keep going, and let's see what we have here. Have the Arabs tried to make peace with Israel? Have the Arabs come up with a peace initiative to try to reconcile with the state of Israel? Well, I'd like to inform you, yes, definitely. The peace initiative of 2002, sometimes we call it the Saudi Initiative or the Arab Peace Initiative. And it says the initiative calls for normalizing relations between the Arab region and Israel in exchange for a full withdrawal by Israel from the occupied territories, including East Jerusalem, and a just settlement of Palestinian refugee problem based on UN Resolution 194. How many Arab countries accepted the Saudi Peace Initiative? All of them. How many Muslim countries? Most of Muslim countries accept this initiative. And so the Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu took this initiative, tore it to small pieces, and put it in a trash can. But anyone who says that Arabs miss every opportunity to make peace with Israel, they are not aware of what the Arabs are doing to try to solve their problems with Israel. So what we have today is, yes.
Alex, I was just going to say that we are at the half hour, a little bit over the half hour mark. If there's just one question at this point, but if you want to move towards questions momentarily, that would be good.
Well, let me hear the question, and if the question, I may answer it right now, or if my PowerPoint will answer it, then I'll wait and let my PowerPoint answer it. So let us hear the question.
Okay, I'll just read. It's pretty fairly lengthy. I'll read it. It says, thank you, Mr. Awad, and welcome to Canada. We once met in your office. It is very good to see you again. Whilst it is very difficult to be optimistic about progress toward a just and peaceful settlement in Palestine, Israel, hope is another matter. Do you see signs of hopeful and potentially fruitful initiatives as of the present? Can you begin to foresee the possible shape of the political settlement? From this distance, it looks like a two-state solution is no longer realistic. Would you agree? If this assessment is correct, what other options might there be? A unitary state, a binational state, or some other? I would appreciate your thoughts of this big picture. Thank you.
Yeah, exactly. And I am really, with this slide, I am moving towards answering this question. And I call it here the Israeli dilemma. What is the Israeli dilemma? Most Israelis are against the one-state solution. Most Israeli leaders are against a two-state solution. So what is left? If they don't want a one-state solution, if they don't want a two-state solution, the Prime Minister Netanyahu, he said, there will never be a Palestinian state on my watch. Well, if there will never be a Palestinian state on his watch while he's ruling, then he is against a two-state solution. Because if you have a Palestinian state, there are two-state solutions. But he said it will never happen on my watch. At the same time, most Israeli politicians are against the two-state solution because they believe the two-state solution will destroy the Jewishness of the state. Israel cannot continue to be a state if it is one state for all its citizens, the Palestinian Arabs, Muslims and Christians, and the Jewish people of the state. If it becomes a one state, as a matter of fact, any politician who calls for a one state, the Israelis will call him anti-Semitic. They will think of him as a person who wants to destroy the Jewish people. And so they are against the two-state solution. They're against the one-state solution. And we are asking, what do you want? What do you want if you are against both the two-state solution and the one-state solution? But actually, the Israelis themselves, not the Palestinians, are the ones who are killing the two-state solution by all the settlements that they are building in the West Bank and all the land that they are confiscating in the West Bank, and even the threat of confiscating the Jordan River Valley, which is 1/3 of the West Bank. So I say this is an Israeli dilemma because most Israelis don't know where they are going to go in the future. It's a Palestinian nightmare because as long as the Israelis are not willing to decide whether it is a one state or two states, will be in a limbo. And we, the Palestinians, are suffering the most because of the Israeli indecision on that. And also, it is a nightmare for peacemakers, like all of us who want to see peace in the Middle East. You go and ask the Israelis, what do you want, one state or two state? And you see how frustrated they are in answering this question. But even if they say they want a two state, ask them how big is this Palestinian state going to be? Are they going to give one or two reservations for the Palestinians and call it a state? You know, this is what we call the Israeli dilemma. I feel in the future, we can look for either a democratization where Israel will decide, okay, why not have one democratic state for all Israelis and Palestinians in one state? I think that will be the best solution. And if the Israelis want to call me anti-Semitic for saying this, let them do that. But I don't say it out of hatred for the Jewish people or for Israelis, but I think this is the more rational thing. Because if you don't accept democratization and having equal rights for everybody in the one state, then you are really asking for an apartheid state, where the Israelis continue to confiscate Palestinian land. And by the way, there are about half of the population between the River Jordan and the Mediterranean Sea are Palestinians. So half the people will be under the thumb of the Israelis. They will be ruled by the Israelis, and they will not have equal rights like the Israelis. And that is the definition of apartheid. So if the Israelis are not accepting a legitimate Palestinian state, they are not accepting a two-state solution, they are heading towards an apartheid state. I hope that will not be their choice, but more and more Israelis will decide on a democratic, free, just state for everyone. Okay, we'll quickly go for one or two more. Okay, for current threats facing Palestinians, you know, I mean, in the United States, people are suffering from COVID a little bit. In Canada, thank God, you know, the situation in Canada is much better than the United States. But Palestinians are not only having the threat of COVID-19, but also the threat of annexation, the deal of the century, and normalization of some Arab countries that goes against the Palestinian dream of an independent state. Okay, I will stop here. And if anyone have another question, I'd be very glad to answer it. Otherwise, I will continue.
Yes, there's one more question that's came up in the chat box. The question is, what is the connection between normalization and Iran? Is this an attempt to build an anti-Iranian coalition?
Exactly. I think the person who asked the question already, he or she, they have the answer within the question. The normalization of these emirates, these you know, dictatorships, they are actually dictatorships, whether it is the United Arab Republic or whether it is Bahrain, and they don't really represent their people. Have they asked their people, you want to normalize with the state of Israel? Most of their people would say no. But anyway, they are scared of Iran, whether for right reasons or for wrong reasons. They are normalizing with Israel and with the United States in order to have military bases by the Israelis and by the Americans in their countries to protect them from what they see as the Iranian threat. It's very, very unfortunate because they are Muslims, the Iranians are Muslims. Yes, they are Shiite Muslims, but they are still Muslims. And it looks like instead of, putting their hands with the hands of the Israelis, they can, reconcile with their neighbors and live at peace with their neighbors. But anyway, the Palestinians really are the scapegoat. They have nothing to do with normalization. Yeah. All right. If you allow me, I will continue, but please keep those questions coming. If you have any question, please feel like writing down your question, and I'll stop after a while and I'll try to answer the question. All right, so we are here now. I want to talk a little bit about the Palestinian church, because although all Palestinians are suffering, Palestinian Muslims suffer, Palestinian Christians suffer, and some Israelis are suffering because of the situation in the Holy Land. So a lot of suffering, but the numbers of Christians are declining very, very fast. We are now less than 2% of the total population. Before 1948, we were about 15% of the population. And a few years before that, we were like 25% of the population. And if the situation continues as it is today, the number of Christianity will be eradicated from the Holy Land. This subject really is very, very important to my heart, and it should be important to every Christian around the world, because the Holy Land does not just belong to Palestinian Christians. It belongs to Christians everywhere. We should not be the only guardians of the Christian presence in the Holy Land. The whole world, should be the guardian of Christian presence. The whole Christian world should be the guardian of Christian presence in the Holy Land, because Christ was born in Bethlehem. He died on the cross in Jerusalem. He rose from the dead in Jerusalem. As the church was born on the day of Pentecost in Jerusalem. So the Holy Land and the church in the Holy Land belongs to Christianity all over the world. But the situation in the Holy Land is actually destroying the Church of Jesus Christ in the Holy Land. And so I want to call on Christians today to stand in solidarity with the Christians in the Holy Land so that they can stay in their country and continue to be witnesses for Jesus Christ in the land of his birth, death, resurrection, and the land where the church started. All right, so the question is, will the church survive in the Holy Land? You see here 3 churches. One is what we would call, to the extreme right, is the teardrop. This picture is taken from the Teardrop Church on Mount Olives towards Jerusalem. This picture in the middle is taken from Gaza. One of the oldest churches in Christianity is in Gaza. It's a very, very beautiful church. And I encourage you, if you go to Gaza, one day there will be peace and you can enter Gaza. I encourage you to visit the Orthodox Church in Gaza, which goes back to the 4th century after Christ. And the third one on the left is the Church of St. Elias. It is in between Bethlehem and Jerusalem. So the question again, will the church survive in the Holy Land? here in this map, you see the Christian presence in the Middle East and North Africa. And you see the green stuff represent Christians in the Middle East and North Africa. And these numbers that you see here are rapidly declining. We have less and less Christians, especially the political situation in Syria and Lebanon caused many Muslims, but also many Christians to become refugees into other countries. Egypt has still between 10 to 15 million Coptic Christians. That's the largest church in the Middle East. But in the West Bank, in Israel, and in the Gaza Strip, Christianity is fast dying. And let us pray that, you know, we can hold on for future generations. All right. Why Arab Christians leave their countries? Why do Palestinian Christians leave their country? If I ask my brothers and sisters who live in the United States, and some of their children, grandchildren, they live in Canada, in Kitchener, in London, Canada, and in Toronto, this is what they would say. The situation of wars and occupation, economic turmoil and instability, uncertainty about their future within the Palestinian or the Arab society where they are living, relatively high socioeconomic status among some Christians provides opportunity, inspiration to seek jobs or fortune outside their country. And also the threat of radical Islamist movement. I want to say that in Palestine, we don't have Islamic persecution of Christians, but in the last 10, 15 years, some radical Islamic movements killed many, many Muslims, but also killed some Christians. But that caused fear in the hearts of some Christians, which caused them to leave their countries. All right, Palestinian Christian response. How are Palestinian Christian responding to the situation, to the violence in the that they see every day? Okay, one, I would call it the Kairos Palestine document. That's the picture that caused me so much headache in the beginning. But anyway, you know, some Palestinian theologians and church officials, they came together and they wrote what we call the Kairos Palestine document in December 11, 2009. They called it a moment of truth, a word of faith, hope, and love from the heart of Palestinian suffering. And they send it out to the rest of the world, calling on the church in the world to come and stand in solidarity with the church in the Holy Land. And of course, many, many churches did come. They stood in solidarity with Palestinian Christianity against many odds. And we are thankful for all of our friends all over the world. And many of them, they had to be punished by Zionists because of standing with the Palestinians. Lately, the situation have become even worse. And the presence of Palestinian Christianity have become more threatened. So recently, the Palestinians created a new document called A Palestinian Cry for Hope. And you can read that document if you go to this website. So please write it down, go to it, you can read the whole document. But in summary, Palestinians are asking Christians around the world to help us bend the arc towards justice. And when Palestinian Christians talk about justice, they are actually talking about justice for everyone, not only for Palestinian Christians, also for Palestinian Muslims, also for Jews, also for Israelis, also for people who are living in settlements. We want peace for everybody, not only for one group of people. So yes, come and help us bend the moral arc of the universe towards justice. All right, and did I, yes, now I'm here. what do Palestinians, what to do?
Yes.
Yes.
Do you want to answer the question, Gary?
Sure.
And
Go ahead.
I'll stop screen and then you can.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah, there's just a couple questions in the chat. One of them is, what is the connection? Do most Palestinians support Hamas? Is a question.
Yeah. I would say many Palestinians support Hamas. And the reason they support Hamas is because Hamas has been actually fighting for the Palestinian cause. The majority of the Palestinians really lean towards nonviolence. But sometimes Palestinians notice that many years of negotiations, many years of nonviolence did not bring them any positive results, did not end the occupation, did not end the siege of Gaza. And the Israelis, even while negotiating peace with the Palestinians, they continue to confiscate land. And so Mahmoud Abbas, who was totally against violence, who was totally against any retaliation against Israelis, and who would even take Hamas people and put them in jail, you know, he and his group in Ramallah were faced with angry Palestinians because Mahmoud Abbas was giving everything that Israel was asking, but they were receiving nothing from Israel. Nothing as far as diplomatic progress towards peace and the end of the conflict. And this is why many Palestinians favored Hamas, because of the lack of progress on the peace front. However, if today the Americans, the Israelis will come to Mahmoud Abbas and say, let us have really the peace of the brave, and we are willing to have a two-state solution. We are willing to stop the Israeli settlements in the West Bank. We will negotiate in good faith. Hamas will have no place. Hamas only gains ground when there is no peace solution in the horizon, when the Israelis and the Americans are playing tricks on the Palestinians, and when the Canadians are sleeping and not doing their job in promoting peace and justice in the Holy Land. I'm not talking about Canadian Mennonites or Canadian Christians. I'm talking mainly about the Canadian Parliament and the Canadian government. So if Canadians, if Americans, if the Israelis will become genuine about peace, there will be no place for Hamas and possibly no place for Hezbollah. These groups, they thrive because of American and Israeli hypocrisy.
That's all I have right now, so you can carry on with your presentation and we'll give some space at the end again.
All right, let's go back to screen sharing. Okay, and can we take this off? Can you take this one off the screen? Because we don't need it. But anyway, I'll go here so that I will not be wasting. What to do to help?
Sorry, Alex, why don't you see if you can make a full screen now, and it might stop a couple slides back.
That's right. If you take that thing that, yeah, go ahead.
You're going to have to do it.
Okay. Now you see, it goes back to this.
So just go ahead now with your,
okay.
Just move that slide if you had.
Yeah, I don't know how to get rid of that myself. If my son was here, definitely he would be able to do it. The younger generation are smarter than us with these things. Okay, back to screen. Here we go. And this is what I want, all right. Okay, so what to do to help bending the moral arc toward justice in Israel and in Palestine? So this is a question for you who are listening to us, and for me, and for the Palestinians, and for Israelis who love peace and justice in the world. What are we to do to bend the moral arc towards justice? And here are some of my suggestions. Elect leaders and representatives who are committed to peace and justice. You know, if Mennonites never voted before, they need to vote. And they need to vote for members of parliament and representatives that would work for peace and justice. And again, when I say peace and justice, I'm not saying peace and justice just for Palestinians, but for everybody who lives from the Mediterranean Sea to the River Jordan. Initiate and support grassroots advocacy. Join or create an advocacy group. I used to go, before COVID-19, I used to go and speak in churches, Presbyterian churches, Methodist churches, Lutheran churches, Anglican churches, Mennonite churches. And quite often people say, what can we do? What can we do? We want to help bring peace and justice to Palestine and Israel. What can we do? My answer is start a group or join a group that is doing the work, an advocacy group. So don't be alone. This is a big task. You need to work with others. But can you imagine if North America, Canada, and the United States is full, every state, every community has a group that is working for peace and justice in Palestine. So if you are in an area where there is no group, in a city where there is no group working for peace and justice, you create that group. If you don't know how to create a group, maybe you become a part of a group, just join a group. But we need to enlarge the base of people who are committed to peace and justice in the Holy Land. Call on the church in Canada to be prophetic and be a leader for the struggle for justice. I believe God called us as Christians to be peacemakers, and God called us to put our weight on the ark to bring it to justice. And we can speed up that process if every one of us will do their part in trying to, create justice. But we must be brave. We must not be afraid when some people call us anti-Semitic because we supported peace and justice in the Holy Land. And we should not be afraid if people say to us, you are supporting terrorism. We are not supporting terrorism. We are supporting both Israelis and Palestinians who want peace and justice in their country. Okay, educate yourself and your friends. We need to learn more about what's happening. Don't trust the media. I mean, I live in the United States. I will not trust Fox News. I will not trust CNN or any other of these mega media channels when it comes to the issue of Israel and Palestine, because they just totally corrupt the news on what's happening in the Middle East. They never tell us the truth. Listen to your church representatives in Israel and in Palestine. The Mennonites, you have a representative in Palestine. He or she is there. He or she, they know the situation. If you are a Methodist, if you are Presbyterian, if you are Anglican, you have your people also there in the Holy Land, in Israel and Palestine. Call them, find out the truth from them. Okay, many churches have what we call PINs, P-I-N. A PIN is what I would say Palestine-Israel Network. The Mennonites have a PIN called Menno-PIN. Okay, this is the group of Mennonites who are trying to create peace and justice in the Holy Land. See what they are doing, get their emails and support what they are doing. In North America, we have FASNA, Friends of Sapir in North America. They are doing a tremendous good job to try to educate the American North Americans about what's happening in the Holy Land. So read Fazna's newsletters. And also, there is a website called www.christianzionism.org. Open that website, learn about Christian Zionism, be equipped to answer your Christian Zionist friends and give them your perspective. And also try to get some information from a group called Jewish Voice for Peace. Wonderful, wonderful people who are committed to peace and justice in the Holy Land. So as you get this alternate information, you will be quite educated about what's happening in Israel and Palestine. All right, the next one is, okay, here is the next one. Join nonviolent means to end the occupation, such as BDS. Stand in solidarity with peace and justice groups. In the United States, in Canada, in Israel, in Palestine, there are peace and justice groups. They need your support. They need to hear from you. They need your encouragement. Stand with them as they try to make peace and justice. Also, seek God's help. The Bible clearly says, not by might, not by power, but by my spirit, says the Lord. I want to be on this ark, but I want God to lead me on the ark. I want God also to put his weight. I want God to put his speed in order to speed justice for Israelis and for Palestinians. So let's not, as Christians, Mennonites, Presbyterians, Lutherans, Methodists, let's not put God on the shelf and try to make peace without God. God is the Prince of Peace. God is the author of peace. And with him, we can do the job much, much better and much, much faster. So I urge all Mennonites, all the people who are listening to me, to pray, seek God's wisdom and God's help as we continue to work to bring about peace and justice to our troubled world. And I would say challenge Christian Zionism. Christian Zionism is very powerful in the United States and in Canada. And I remember, I was invited to speak at a conference in Toronto. The invitation was by World Vision. And once I got to Toronto, I was disinvited because in that big conference, it's called Mission Fest in Toronto, some groups who are Christian Zionists, they decided to pull out of the conference if I would speak in the conference. And so World Vision called me and asked me to disinvite myself. And I did. But this showed me the power of Christian Zionism in Canada. And of course, it is huge in the United States with 40 to 60 million people who are considered Christian Zionists in the United States. So we need to face Christian Zionism. And how do we do that? I would say the best way to deal with your Christian Zionist brother or sister is to know the Bible. The Bible is the strongest defense against Christian Zionism. If you want to deal with Christian Zionists, you need to know your Bible and what the Bible says about the theology of the land, which is called the Holy Land or Palestine. So what I did is I created a chart. Some of you have seen this chart. And if you like to have a copy of the chart, I'd be very glad to send it to you, because in the back of the chart, I have all the verses from the Bible that go along with the chart. But if you look at the chart, you see on the top line, the nation, the land, the city, the temple, the priesthood, the sacrifice. In the middle, you have Israel, the promised land, Jerusalem, Temple Mount, Levitical priesthood, animal sacrifice. And the bottom line is all believers, kingdom of God, New Jerusalem, hearts of believers, Christ and believers, Jesus Christ. So now I use this chart to help my Christian Zionist brothers and sisters to say, okay, the top line is an important aspect of both the new covenant and the old covenant. And then the middle line, you see Israel, the promised land, Jerusalem, the temple, Levitical priest, the animal sacrifice. It has to do with the Old Testament. It has to do with the old covenant. And then when you go to the bottom line, right here, you see all believers, kingdom of God, New Jerusalem, house of believers, Christ and believers, Jesus Christ. Now, what I'd like you to do is look with me, say for the nation. The nation in the Old Testament, it was Israel, no doubt about it. Whatever we read in the Old Testament, it gives us an idea that God chose the Jewish people. They are his chosen people. But when you come to the New Testament, the idea of chosenness, totally different. John says he came to his own did not receive him, but as many as received him, he gave them the power to become the children of God. So the idea of chosenness was expanded in the New Testament. It does not exclude the Jewish people. I'm not talking about replacement theology. I am saying it's enlarged to take in anybody who believes in Jesus Christ. The land in the Old Testament, it was the Holy Land, for the Jewish people. But as we come to the New Testament, I mean, that's in the Old Testament, promised land for Israel, for the Jewish people. In the New Testament, we don't hear about the land. We hear about the kingdom of God for all those who trust in Jesus Christ. And that includes Jewish people. It's not only for the Gentiles. The city in the Old Testament, Jerusalem. In the New Testament, it's very, very clear. Like in Jesus' conversation to the Samaritan woman, he told her, it is not on this mountain or on that mountain. God is spirit, and those who worship him in spirit and in truth. The temple in the Old Testament, it was a building on Mount Zion or Mount Moriah. In the New Testament, Paul clearly says, you are the temple of God. He says to the church, and God's spirit dwells in you. The priesthood in the Old Testament, Levitical priesthood in the New Testament, it became Christ and the church. The sacrifice, animal sacrifice in the Old Testament, but Jesus became our ultimate sacrifice, as we learned throughout the New Testament. So when you present this to your Christian Zionist brother and sister, and when you support it with verses from the New Testament, they just open their mouth and say, wow, I didn't know this, and in half an hour or in 45 minutes, you can win your brother and sister to a better understanding of the theology of the land. And again, I want to emphasize, this is not supersessionism. This is not replacement theology. We are not saying that God is finished or through with the Jewish people. We are only saying that God opened the doors of grace, his grace, to all nations, including the Jewish people, and anyone who receives him can inherit the kingdom of God. All right, I want to end at hopeful notes, and I would call it signs of hope. And here it is, the first sign of hope. Many young people in the United States and in Canada and around the world are getting their news from the electronic media and are more eager for peace than a blind support for the state of Israel. Another sign of hope is what I call demography. Demography is a sign of hope for Palestinians, not for Israelis, but for Palestinians. You see, from the Mediterranean Sea to the Jordan River, half of the population, and within few years, it will become more than half of the population, are Palestinian Christians and Palestinian Muslims. So the Israelis have to decide what they are going to do. Are they going to confiscate our land and keep us landless when we are half of the population? It doesn't make sense. Demography itself makes me hopeful that in the future, we will have a democratic state in the Holy Land for both Israeli Jews and Palestinian Christians and Muslims. Another sign of hope is many Israelis and Jews are fed up with the policies of the current Israeli government, and some are becoming the strongest advocates for Palestinian rights. I mean, look at Jewish Voice for Peace, the J Street, and many other rabbis for human rights and others. They are in the forefronts of Jewish people that are defending Palestinian rights and defending genuine peace between Israelis and Palestinians. Here is another sign of hope. Let me go down a little bit. Another sign of hope is international, especially after the Gaza war, Israel has become isolated. Many countries who are close friends of Israel are ready to recognize Palestinian statehood. This map shows us how many countries in the world are supporting Palestinian or recognized Palestinian statehood. We are waiting for Canada to do that. What's the matter with Canada? Come on. I want to call on Canadian Christians to work harder on Canadian Christians and Canadian non-Christians, secular people, in order for Canada to recognize Palestinian statehood, because that will put pressure on Israel either to accept a two-state solution or one democratic state between the River Jordan and the Mediterranean Sea. Another one sign of hope is most Palestinians, including their president, Mahmoud Abbas, have committed to non-violent methods to resist illegal occupation of the land. No matter what you think about Mahmoud Abbas, some people don't like him because of his collaboration with the Americans and the Israelis and keeping the status quo without progress on the peace front. However, he definitely never encouraged violence against Israelis, and we need to give him credit for that. And people who believe in nonviolence need to really thank Mahmoud Abbas for leading the Palestinians out of culture of violence to a culture of nonviolence. And then another sign, churches in the United States and Canada, including some evangelical churches, are increasingly focusing on issues of justice rather than their historic interpretation of biblical prophecies when dealing with the Palestinian-Israeli conflict. Many evangelicals in Canada, in the United States, are saying enough is enough. We don't want to support a country like Israel that is killing people in the Gaza Strip and in the West Bank and refusing to go along with any peace process. So finally, I would say the moral arc of the universe is bending towards justice. And we are helping to do that. You and I, and Israelis and Palestinians, Jews and Arabs who are working for peace and justice, we are helping bend the arc of the moral universe towards justice. I am ready to receive any questions. So if you have one or two questions left, please let me know.
Well, we actually have 4 questions. So
Good.
And there's some chat going on too. So if people want to follow what's going on in the chat, that's another place. But in the question and answer, when would you talk to evangelical North American Christians who believe in Christian Zionism, and what kind of a response do you get?
You know, before the pandemic, my cousin, some of you know him very well, Jonathan Kutab, and I, we were given a scholarship to tour the United States and Canada and meet with evangelical Christians and Christian Zionists and to share with them our perspective. And it's just amazing. God opened the door for us to go to evangelical colleges, evangelical theological seminaries, evangelical churches. We sat down with Christian Zionists. We sat down with Kufi people. Kufi is Christians United for Israel, John Hagee's people. We sat down with them and we shared with them our perspective. And it was amazing. It was amazing. Once we sit down with them, once we share with them, once we tell them that we are actually for peace and justice for both Israelis and Palestinians, once we show them from the Bible the reality of Christian theology in the New Testament, especially about chosenness, about the land, about these other issues. While we were speaking, they just turned over and they told us they could see nothing that they disagree with us, but rather they agreed with us on everything. So my experience with speaking with evangelicals in a humble way, respecting them, but at the same time using our Bible as a method of reaching to them has been very, very effective. And we have done it in about 15 different states, including several places in Canada. Jonathan went to Canada, but I was mainly in the United States just before the pandemic.
We have another related question. So Mr. Awad, thank you so much for sharing your experiences and wisdom with us. I was wondering if you could speak about Jewish anti-Zionist groups in Palestine, Israel, and how they interact with the current government. Also, can you share about how Christians, Muslims, and Jewish people have worked together for peace?
Yeah, thank you. The question is loaded, so if I forget some part of the question, please remind me again. First of all, when the Zionist movement started in Europe, not all Jews were pleased with the Zionist movement because it was secular and it was atheist. Most of the early Zionists were atheists. They didn't believe in God, or they were agnostic. They were totally secular. They were not religious Jews. And the Jewish community about 180 years ago, they did not think that these secular Jews are the ones called by God to create a Jewish state in the Holy Land. And they were bitter enemies of the early Zionists who ganged with Christian Zionists in order to create a Jewish state in Palestine. Until today, we have remnants of this, both in the United States and in Israel, and some in England. In the United States and England, they call themselves Natura Carta. These groups of Jews, they call themselves clearly anti-Zionist Jews. Anti-Zionist, that's what they call themselves, anti-Zionist Jews. And they are very conservative Jewish people, but they are totally anti-Zionist. In the United States, they live mainly in Brooklyn, but in Israel, they have whole neighborhoods of anti-Zionist Jews in Israel, and they are at odds with the Israeli government and with the schemes of the Israeli government. And the Palestinian, many Palestinians are reaching out to this. I did a lot of itinerating with one of the leaders of the Natura Carta. We went to Indonesia together, we went to Norway together, and we spoke together about peace and justice in the Holy Land. But there are groups in Israel, in Palestine and Israel, that are meeting together with the rabbis for human rights, Palestinians, Christians, Muslims, and Jews. They meet together. There are many groups. I mean, maybe 30, 40 groups that are working diligently to bring grassroots Jews, Muslims, and Christians together in order to create peace on the grassroots level.
The second half of that question was regarding how do Christians, Muslims, and Jewish people work together for peace?
Yeah, I wish I could say that Muslims, Christians, and Jews are successful in working together for peace, because if they are successful, we would have peace by now, and we don't, you know. So evidently, all the work that we have been doing together, it is good. I support it. It's wonderful, but it did not come up with the results that we desire. But as far as interfaith dialogue between Christians, Muslims, and Jews, especially in the United States, I don't know how it works in Canada, but in the United States, they come together, they, you know, dance the hula, the dabka, they eat good food, you know, and they drink all kinds of wonderful drinks. And they talk about everything else except peace and justice in the Holy Land. I mean, I had an experience like this where I was invited to one of these interfaith dialogue groups in Kansas City, Missouri. And next to me was the mullah, the Islamic mullah. His name is Muhammad. And I said, Muhammad, this is good food, good music, dancing is wonderful. When are they going to deal with the issues of Israel and Palestine and the Arab-Israeli conflict? And Muhammad said, don't mess up things. He said, don't mess up things, because if you deal with these issues, it will frustrate people and we will not have this meeting again and so on. And I said, yeah, interfaith eating and interfaith dancing, interfaith, you know, fun, but not really interfaith dialogue. And so I told them this would be the last time I would be part of this group. But unfortunately, if you are not willing to address the real issues, the issues of occupation, the issues that I mentioned, the land confiscation, the siege of Gaza, the issue that Israel is not willing to decide on a one-state solution or a two-state solution, all of these, if in an interfaith dialogue, if we ignore these issues, we are not going to progress towards peace and justice.
All right, our time is starting to run out. I just have one, there was a question about whether this is being recorded, and it is being recorded, and whether it can be shared with our churches. And yes, tomorrow we will send out an email to all the attendees with a YouTube link to the webinar.
Wonderful.
Mm-hmm. I think I'm going to turn it back to Jerry now to wrap things up.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Alex, and thank you to all of you who joined us for this webinar. Alex, thank you again for the immense gift of your wisdom that you've given to us. So may we all be more informed and more encouraged to participate in this search for peace and to do what we can to make it increasingly a reality.
Yeah, I would like to say, if anybody wants to read more about the story of my family, I have a book called Palestinian Memories. Just write me a note and I'll tell you how to get a copy of this book. And also, I'd be very glad to share this article with you that I wrote. So if you want, if you can't get it from the internet, or if you want any of my articles that I have written in the last few months, I'd be very glad to connect you with magazines that have my articles in them.
Okay. Thank you again. Thank you all and good night.
Good night. Thank you very much.